The universe effigy found in Orange County, California, is an often referenced object on this channel when it comes to describing effigies and how indigenous peoples represented their cosmology with what items they had available or valued. Just like the universe effigy was carved out of chlorite schist from Catalina Island, the indigenous peoples spanning the entire length of the Baja Peninsula and beyond, it is believed, represented their worldviews using hardwood tablets or tablas, and painted geometric designs on them, and sometimes with perforations. There are also other theories and accounts as to the use of the tablas depending on the group that used them, not just to function as physical representations of how they saw their world, and that will be explored later in the film. Tablas and the tools that made them are very poorly attested to in the archaeological record, having never been found in a controlled dig, thus it is difficult to pinpoint a start date to when they were first created. In the United States, only 8 tablets are known to reside in museums, half of which supposedly are in the now Museum of Us in San Diego, and one at the now defunct Southwest Museum in Los Angeles. The remaining tablets are said to be in private collections. The number of tablets in Baja California is unknown. One anecdote writes about a rancher and his 2 ranch hands finding shelter in a cave during a thunderstorm near La Purísima, Baja California Sur in the 60s, coming across 3 tablets but having to use 2 for firewood. The surviving tablet was donated to the Anthropological Museum in La Paz. It measured 1.45 meters or 4 foot 9 and had a varying width between 6 to 12.5 centimeters or 2.5 to 5 inches. Since they have been found in caves in sites attributed to the Las Palmas complex, usually associated with the historical Pericúes, it is plausible that they were shortly created before or after contact with the Spanish. The Cochimí were said to have already been making tablas in the 1600s. Theories range from believing the first tablets were made by flawed sand from ships and the introduction of metal knives that would help in carving, although it has been reported that the tablas were crafted with stone tools, albeit with much difficulty. Rock art of the tablas, the other iteration of how tablas are represented by indigenous Baja Californians, have not been dated. What were the tablas used for? What do the motifs on them represent? The next part of the film will look at the various traditions of tabla making and its multiple uses, utilizing ethnographic accounts, which are the only sources that have recorded the many uses of the tablas. According to an unpublished account by William Massey, the Pericú, Guayacura, and Cochimí shamans used the tablas as a symbol of power and where they could tap into the energy contained in them. One account by Miguel Venegas, a Jesuit missionary in the early to mid 1700s, wrote about how the tablas were used to confer the legitimacy of the Guayacura shaman. He would show them a tabla he had drawn himself, said to be a copy of the tabla in the sky, where the spirits reside, quote. In attesting to their authority, they, the shamans, sometimes said that they were those same spirits in which they believed, others, that they had been to the sky and talked with their gods, and for proof, they showed a fresh noseworm of a deer, or a bit of pelt, and a small plant, with which they said they could kill whomever they wished. But most usual was to have in their hands some little boards, made with much effort because of the lack of iron tools, of the heart of the mesquite, or of another tree that is called uña de gato, cat's claw, on which they have painted absurd figures that they said they copied authentically the tabla, which the visitant spirit left them when they went to the sky. And these same are those that the shamans of Loreto taught in their secret school for the children, unquote. This quote also brings up another interesting function of the tablas, that they were used as a sort of mnemonic teaching device by the shamans, as a way for them to remember and record legends and history. The shaman would also take the children, most likely only the boys, of the village to caves to learn, using the tablas as a teaching device, teaching them how to read the wooden tablets. Massey attests to this, quoting part of a previous account, probably by the Jesuit missionary, quote, "Shamans are said to have withdrawn with the children to caves and other secluded places in this region for the teaching of doctrines and some other useless stupidities, which included the forming of figures on tablas," unquote. The account of the missionary Salvatierra goes further into this, saying that Loreto, quote, "The sorcerers took the children to some caves or places far from the woods, and there they taught them to form certain figures on boards, and once they learned these, they taught them others in the way that is done in schools, to teach children to write. When the Indians were busy during pitaya harvesting season, all the children disappeared from the Real de Loreto," unquote. This has led to tablas being called books, and incorrectly referred to as a type of writing system. Maybe caves served as sort of libraries for these tablets, only accessible to the shamans and those who could read them in some traditions. The theory that tablas were books that stored valuable knowledge is further claimed by the last work of Father Clavijero, an ethnographer in the late 1700s. In his account of the Baja California natives wrote, quote, These guamas, or charlatans, chose from among the children those who seemed to them the most cunning and suitable for this trade, and taking them to the most remote places of the forests, they trained them in their mysteries, and especially making on certain tablets some mysterious figures, which they pretended to be copies of those which, they said, had left them when the visiting spirit retired. These tablets were the books in which they pretended to read the nature of diseases, the remedies suitable for them, the future patterns of the air, and even the destiny of men." Unquote. Another documented type of tabla was a sort of totem, especially amongst the nations of the northern Baja Peninsula, displayed by each family as a sort of crest, and having a sharp extension that could be held upright to stick in the ground, or displayed on the family altar. There was another type of tabla with holes that are believed to have been used as a sort of mask. The shaman would stick his tongue in a large hole in the center and move it around and speak. It was a spirit speaking through the tabla, as one was seen used in this manner in a Niue, which we will talk about in detail later. The various uses of tablas by the Kiliwa is probably one of the most documented of the tabla making tradition, the most important of which was used in the Niue, or ghost calling ceremony. We have already looked at Luis Salas' account of a Niue in the Pachuca human hair cape film. Also in his description, he observed the use of tablas. He wrote, quote, "Besides these tablets, there are others which are about a vara long and half as wide. In the middle there is a hole, and from time to time he thrusts his tongue in and out of it." Unquote. In this example of a tabla, the motifs are believed to depict the cosmology of the Kiliwa and how Melti Pashala created the 4 quadrants of the earth. The southern quadrant of the tabla represents the southern sea, painted yellow. The northern quadrant, painted red, represented the Laguna Salada, once part of the larger Lake Awia in ancient times. The western quadrant, painted black, represents the Pacific Ocean, and the eastern quadrant represents the Gulf of California and was painted white. The top of the tabla was painted blue and represented the sky above. The bottom of the tabla with the handle represents the earth and was brown. The middle of the tabla represented Ko'olua Nimat, the land where the Kiliwa lived. Alternatively, the 4 quadrants may represent the 4 clans of Kiliwa created by Melti Pashala. For the conclusion of this film, we will look at a theory by Casiano Verde in his paper as to why the tablas were created by the indigenous peoples of the Baja Peninsula. He writes that the tablas are a modern response to an ancient necessity to preserve their culture. A strange new people bringing their faith and forcibly making the native inhabitants of Baja California conform to their beliefs under violence, as well as having many of their own fall ill. The shamans decided that they needed a way to reinforce the social hierarchy and pass on their knowledge, which is why these tablas were used as teaching tools and mnemonic devices, so that the youth would not forget their origins and their identities, and carry them on into future generations.